Welcome to AM. My name's Richard Conway, and this is the platform for age group multisport athletes to showcase their journeys. Welcome along to episode 18. As we're recording this, we are about a week away from Christmas Day. Mrs. C's put the Christmas tree up. We've got a real one this year. She's wrapped all the presents and cards are being sent out as we speak. I've had a birthday. It was thoroughly spoilt. Mrs. C bought me a new sports watch, which has actually brought me into the 21st century. I was using the old Garmin 910 XT, which did the job and still works. So if anything goes wrong with a new one, I can fall back on that. But no, this new one is all singing, all dancing. Yeah, quite special. So thoroughly spoilt. We also had an evening out. Yeah, and we're in tier 3 and we went out for an evening. We went for an evening of meditation and Reiki, and it was absolutely just what was needed at this time. Very odd being out, very odd, but really enjoyed it. Training's going well, mainly doing some long runs and some hill sprints and Zwifting a couple of times a week and doing some mountain biking at the weekends. We've been socially distancing and meeting up for some rides, and last weekend we went to ride to see the seals at our local nature reserve. The seals come in every year at the same spot, and yeah, it's fantastic to go and see them. Episode 17's been getting a lot of love and it's doing really well with downloads, so thank you very much for that. It was a great podcast from Karina. If you haven't heard it yet, get yourself over to YouTube. You can listen to it on there or any of the podcast platforms. Yeah, give it a listen and give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. And all the other podcasts are on there as well. There's another 16 to go at. So if you haven't listened to any of them and this is your first one, there's plenty to go at and there's some fantastic stories along the way. So check them out. On this episode, we have a guy who is known on Instagram as the Sustainable Triathlete, Craig Boggon. Craig works as a physiotherapist for the NHS, and he was working in paediatrics until March when COVID hit, and then he was seconded over to adults where he was working with the nurses and helping with ventilation and respiratory and also rehabilitation of patients. And he goes into that in quite some detail at the beginning of the chat, which is both interesting and very humbling. Craig chatted about being a self-titled podgy kid at school. He was always active and his main sport was football when he was in the juniors, and it wasn't until a teacher at his senior school who represented GB in duathlon and triathlon told him all about his tales of going abroad and racing and representing. But it wasn't until university that Craig actually found multisport, and he got involved in it was an athletics club in Huddersfield, and there was a few age groupers in there that took him under the wing, and yeah, from there he's flourished. The thing that interested me about Craig's email was his passion for sustainability, and on Instagram he's known as the Sustainable Triathlete. So I was intrigued to find out what that was all about and what he meant by it. And I think, as Craig admits himself, it's early days in his sustainability adventure, but looking into it and talking to him, there's a lot more we can all do to become aware of that it's not a bottomless pit, and pretty much we're destroying the planet if we carry on in the direction that we're going. So I think our awareness has been heightened since the David Attenborough film, which was out on Netflix, and I think that sort of woke everybody up a little bit. But we can all do more. We need to start making decisions that don't have a negative consequence for the current generation or future generations to come. And having looked at a little bit of sustainability, it impacts a wide range of ecological human issues, from preservation of natural resources to the commitment of us as a society and well-being. And Craig looks at it from a point of a triathlete, so he had some intriguing points to put across, and yeah, hope you enjoy it. So we'll see you on the other side.
Hi, Rich.
Good morning, Craig. How are we?
Yeah, grand, thank you. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for coming and agreeing to be on AMP.
No, it's all right. It's honestly a great little podcast, and once I've got my turbo back up and going, yeah, look forward to listening into some of the other sessions. I've been picking them here and there where I can. They're absolutely brilliant, nice and motivated.
Yeah,
really delightful.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So where in the world do we find you?
So up in Newcastle, and yeah, I've been here now for almost. This is going to be the 5th year, actually. So I've been here a nice long time now, and getting a nice, still cold, but yeah, it's good.
Well, we've got looking at your email, we've got a few things in common actually. Firstly, my wife was born in Huddersfield, so she grew up there. So I know Huddersfield fairly well. And the second one was that she went to university in Newcastle, and I worked up there as well. So we were up there for about 2.5, 3 years. Well, she was up for 3 years, and I was up there for about 2.5 years. So both, we like Newcastle quite a lot. We haven't been back for some time now, but yeah, we had a really good time up there. So what do you do? Was it for a living?
So I work as a physiotherapist. So went to university in 2011, graduated in 2014. But I have been working a number of areas. So before coronavirus, I think that's for a lot of NHS workers, I was working in paediatrics. And then in March, when the first lockdown occurred, obviously I went back onto adults to help with some of the waves, and I got onto the COVID wards and actually helping medical staff and nursing staff with the ventilation, because of the skills that we have as physiotherapists.
Yeah.
It's not only like the typical musculoskeletal ailments that we deal with, but there's a good sector obviously that physios that deal with like neurological incidences, stroke rehabilitation, and neuromuscular disease, but also we've got a respiratory cohort of physiotherapists that deal with cystic fibrosis, your COPDs, that's the obstructive pulmonary disorders, and also we've been actually very helpful in COVID relation. So I had basically the consultants that we worked with and the nurses very much coming to my colleagues and myself for our expertise in one, ventilation using positive airway pressure, CPAP, but also because it's completely unknown, and because we go in from not only a spiritual point of view, but also a rehabilitation point of view. Everybody was sort of saying, what do we do? How do we rehabilitate these people? And it quickly became apparent as physiotherapists, we were in prime position to be able to say, this is how we wean people off this ventilator. This is how we get them back to being physically active. And this is what we know from our sort of weaning programs, and how to get these people back physically active. And then we're very fortunate, just through one thing or another, that I got to see a few of the patients that I'd actually helped in the acute hospital setting back in clinics. We held a long COVID clinic, and seeing some of those people that were pretty much at death's door, and happened to have the ventilatory pressure for 48, 72 hours, continually without much nutrition alongside that, to then seeing them again and seeing the frustrations and some people who were very physically active not being able to do as much. But on the other side of things, I met again a huge number of people, particularly a couple of people who again were extremely physically active. One of them who used to do sort of bodybuilding and weightlifting, but almost similar to the age group. He did age group bodybuilding here in the Northeast, and he was like the psychological like principles of once you've got the motivation. He had the motivation from the start, and he just powered through, and it was so for him it was very much having to sort of educate him. He'd got through the severe part coming off intensive care and come down to the wall with us, and we had to just educate him about, actually, we need to slow things down. You can't be at the same level that you were previously. You need to just tone it right down, and like just to get him back to walking, like it was big efforts, but he had the mentality to be able to say, right, I know what I need to do, and let's just crack on. And it was really inspiring to work with him, and it was good laughs in such a dreadful times, but definitely massive learning experiences, which has been very I've been very grateful to actually being able to be working during this period to help a lot of people, and it's been very I've just very much enjoyed working. It sounds a bit crazy, but yeah, it's I think just those efforts when in medical terms, it's just shown what we can do as people, and the community of the NHS has been absolutely fabulous working with my colleagues. Yeah.
Well, we just like to thank you and all the people like you that work. It's just, we appreciate it so much, and we don't realise, I think we take it for granted how lucky we are to have such a fantastic NHS. So keep up the good work, and thanks for all you've done. And it must be really fulfilling to be, involved in it at that level. So yeah, great stuff. 100%, yeah. So moving on to your sporting background and history, if you'd like to give us a rundown on, what you used to do as a kid and growing up, and up to the point where you got into triathlon, I suppose.
Yeah, very much. I mean, like I said, I used to be quite a podgy little kid, but and just play football in goals. I never really used to do too much, but then sort of as a kid in primary school, failed my cycling proficiency, but then doing all those Frosty Award and Gold Duck Awards that you did when you were a kid at school. And then I went into secondary school and had a really, really set of amazing PE teachers. I mean, we were on the border with Wales, so we had quite a few people coming over from there, and a lot of our teachers were Welsh. So rugby was a big thing at our school, and I used to play prop. Like I say, I used to be quite a bit bigger in year 7. I remember playing pretty well as a tight head prop. And then as I got a bit older through school, I realised that actually we did like a couple of Cooper runs. So it's like we did a 12-minute run around the astro turf, and I just found that I really enjoyed just running. And then just one thing led to another, and ended up doing a bit more cross country in about year 8 and year 9, so it was about 13, 14. I wasn't the quickest by any means, and I just had that perseverance, that grittiness that I think just ploughed on. And then I started attending a few of the cross-country sessions with our teacher, Mr. Smith, Ian Smith, and just got chatting to him, and I remember one of my friends was like, you ever heard of those, of like an Ironman event? And I'm like, Mr. Smith's done an Ironman. I was like, what's an Ironman at like 14 years old? And like, look it up, and I was like, bloody hell. Like, what, swim? Like 3.8 kilometers swim, and then 180 bike ride, and then a marathon. Like, it's just nuts. And I just remember at the time, I was thinking, that seemed pretty awesome. I'd love to do one of those. And then just chatting to Mr. Smith about, like, where have you been, like, for your triathlons? And he's like, I've been all over the world with it. Like, he's been to Canada, been to Australia. And I think that's because he lived over there as a teacher for a few years and did that. And I think just having that inspiration, just at that age, just to hear like, ooh, like he's doing his teaching job, and then he's also doing his sporting enjoyment on the side, and just seeing where he can go with that, it definitely sort of planted the seed, let's say, of what's available.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only until sort of later on that when I was at university, that I found out, oh, actually, Vicky Holland actually went to my secondary school at Newark, and I was, oh, it's a bit interesting. And then went back once and just chatted to the PE teachers. Said, oh, did you know like Vicky used to? And they were like, oh yeah, obviously extremely proud and seeing all that. So it's amazing what you find out about people that have been at your school. It's seeing those inspirational stories. It's really interesting. But the school also had a little local triathlon. The schools have got a little pool, and I think it was something like 24 lengths of a really odd yard pool, and then a nice little 24-kilometre round the country lanes, and then a nice little 5k that sort of goes around a little lake in Munich as well. And in that year, with my school friends, just finished 40th. And I remember a couple of the Gloucester Triathlon team came up to us at the end and said, oh, have you ever considered doing a triathlon? I said, no, not really. It was just something just to do with friends and just bet each other. I mean, that summer we were sort of cycling around each other's houses and just playing tennis and just playing little bits of rugby here and there and football on the field. So it was just good fun, really, just with mates. Yeah. But for me, triathlon probably kicked off when I went to university in Huddersfield, and I quickly got myself immersed in the local community there, and went to the local bike shop, try cycling, and just asked like, does anybody do triathlon here? And then you met Rachel Mellor and Steve Rimmer and Andrew and John Levick. They were sort of the big names in Huddersfield and home for triathlon and multisport. And I guess at that point, I definitely didn't know what I'd dropped myself into, but I was hooked. It was the culture was just lovely, very family orientated, and then within a few years of studying there and getting to know people, definitely felt as though I fitted in. John Levick, I owe masses to him for giving me that opportunities. Like for a couple of events, I only had my hybrid bike, but then he gave me the opportunity to borrow one of his TT bikes and
fantastic
twice, and took that out. Absolutely, like it was a whiz, absolutely amazing. And it was the old ones that Chrissy Wellington rode,
right?
A couple of pairs, like that old Camdale Slice, and it was just beautiful to ride. And one of the qualifying events at Clumber Park. So the first time I'd rode on my road bike and had a puncture, so I didn't qualify on that one that year. And then the second time, John was like, "Oh, do you want to borrow the slice?" Because I'd just been doing a couple of training rides around at the top of Castle Hill. Okay, I'll borrow it. And it was at Dam Buster, one of the hills going down. So I went down, not the best with the area, but then it was uphill afterwards. And I thought, it's just a quick short downhill. So I quickly whacked it up to the 10th gear, but the chain just jumped straight away and ended up hitting into the 10th cog and the chain stay and just jarred the back wheel, and I just flipped over wearing my cleats, landed on my shoulder, managed to get the chain back in and carry on with the rest of the road, and actually managed to I think I was 4th qualifier by the end of the run. Right. So managed to get a qualifying spot to go to Ottawa. Yeah. And then so I was all ready. I was ready with like Nirvana and everything. I'd paid up and whatnot, using some of my savings. And then about 10 days before, I came out of like a massage appointment with one of the clinics in Huddersfield, was cycling home on my bike, and I was like, why is the speedo like clicking? And I just thought, you know, when you could just do like something when you're cycling along. So I was cycling along and tried to mess with the speedo. My hand got caught in the front wheel.
Oh.
And I ended up jarring that and flipping over the front of the bike. Landed on my shoulder blade again and just fractured it.
Right.
Ended up going to A&E and having that in just a sling for the next few weeks. But
Yeah.
that basically cut out both Ottawa, and I'd qualified for London. Qualified London for, I can't remember which event it was now. I want to say it was Blithfield Triathlon.
Okay.
So obviously, yeah, I'd done a couple of events and just got into that, but 2013 wasn't a good year from a sporting point of view. In 2012, I had a nice couple of events as well, so as well the qualifiers.
Just going back to your qualifying, how did you find out about, obviously you knew that your teacher had done some age group racing, so did you remember that?
Very much like word of mouth, in terms of one of the events I'd attended, they were just like, oh, you know, you were at a qualifying spot and you would have finished first. I think I was 19 or 18 at the point, so it was just before I'd gone to uni, and I was like, no, I didn't know anything about these qualifying. Yeah, I think in the early stages, like, I hadn't really chatted to Mr. Smith about those events and like the process of qualifying. And it was only at the end of one of the triathlons I did locally, and they said, oh yeah, you were in qualifying position there, like you were the first one in your age group back. And I was like, I didn't know anything about that. And won medal and everything. And they were like, oh yeah, if you paid the £10, because obviously I was a BTF member at that time, and like, if you just paid the qualifying entry, you could have gone on to the event. And I think that year the event was in, I want to say France.
Right.
Before Canada. And they were like, if you'd entered, you could have done that. And like I said, when I went to uni, that kind of gave me that spur on to say, oh, actually, maybe I should look at doing triathlon or multi-sport a bit more.
Yeah.
And yeah, joining Homeworth and then realising, like, chatting with John Levick and Richard Anderson about how eventful and fun it can be just to travel around Europe. I mean, I think Richard at that time was doing some of the stuff, just about going into like some of the Ironman distances, and I mean, John had been doing it for years anyway.
So they were quite well versed in all that, and yeah, so you missed out unfortunately when you were 19, but you kicked on. You've definitely made up for it since. Definitely, yeah. And I attended Pontevedra trying to enter there, but unfortunately I had ITB issues again. I think it just ran a bit too much over that winter. So I turned up and just went out and just supported along a lot of the colleagues there. And I think one thing that I just loved about the age group events was just the atmosphere. I mean, finally in 2014, that was an event I was actually able to attend from, and just like the awards ceremony and the procession of the athletes, it was just amazing. It was lovely to be a part of, and yeah, something very special, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I was absolutely gutted again that I couldn't race, but that year, because it was like the 21st, I wanted to just do the Ironman that I thought about when I was younger. So I was like, that was my A race that year, with the Ironman. Which Ironman was that?
Tenby in Wales.
Tenby in Wales.
I volunteered the year before at both Bolton and Tenby just to see what the events are like.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll do Tenby just because it's like the run is all enclosed, and it would be nice for my parents to come and see how the racing is, and they always enjoy coming to the races. So it was a really good one to do, whereas at the time Bolton was over 3 transitions, so it can be very difficult to like logistically. Yeah. Whereas Tenby was so much nicer from that point of view. And then after that, I'd managed to qualify again for Adelaide Duathlon World Championships.
What distance was that?
So the standard distance,
Standard
the
distance.
10k, 40k,
Yeah.
5k, and I think that's definitely my preferred distance, the standard distance. And I just finished uni that summer, and I thought, I may as well make a bit of this and just go travelling. So I went to New Zealand and Australia, and got to meet quite a few people over in New Zealand as well, doing some of their multi-sport days that they do, where they literally traverse like coast to coast,
right,
stuff, and got to meet a few of the like New Zealand age groupers and international athletes that do the kayak, the cycle, and the mountain biking across coast to coast, which was absolutely amazing. And got to do quite a lot of the trails around there, off-roading, and see some of the Xterra events. And again, got to like watch and help out at Ironman Wanaka down there.
Yeah.
And it was just absolutely brilliant. And then went to Australia. I wasn't the fittest. Didn't manage to get much cycling in. I managed to get lots of trail running in, but definitely not maintained a good healthy eating, let's say. It was just a case of what I could find where.
Yeah.
But I managed to do pretty well at that event again. It was, again, the Australians know how to put on an event.
Yeah, they sure do, yeah.
Fantastic. Did you manage to get out there to Adelaide? Or?
No, we were over at the Gold Coast in 2018, and it was just fabulous. We were there for 3 weeks, and it was just amazing. So we have experienced Australia, and definitely go back and do it again.
Yeah, and I think the amazing thing as well is just even speaking with other like-minded age group athletes out there. I mean, the Australians and the Kiwis take their sport very seriously as well, and it's really, really great to see and be a part of, and see how much, like, just the difference between the European World Championships when they were in Pontevedra, the standard between just the like Spanish and French were quite amazing. And it was after Adelaide that I thought I came back and speak to a few of the age group guys like Carl Avery, and just see, like, just listening to a few of them saying what the expanse of actually Europe's standard of duathlon is amazing. Because I think Carl was just starting his transition to sort of do a couple of pro races after Adelaide. And it was really interesting from a run bike run point of view, and listening to the leagues that they have over in Europe. And we wanted to see, like, is there any way that this could be started in the UK? And it was really interesting to see why it wasn't, in terms of just that funding from the councils. I remember speaking to Mark about it, that the councils in France and like Spain and whatnot tend to actually pay for the athletes to come to them, and it was very interesting to hear those logistics behind how sport is so much bigger on the continent, particularly from a run point of view. We earlier in the year we were over at the European Duathlon Championships in Punt-Umbria, and it was, they had the professionals there as well racing. Ali Brownlee was racing, and it was just different level of organisation, even for the duathlon, which isn't supposedly as well. It isn't as well supported as triathlon, shall we say? But yeah, it was still of a high standard, It's amazing. I mean, a few years later, when I was able to go to Aviles, in 2016, and like seeing Richard Murray, I think he'd just come back from like an injury. Yeah. And I think it was one of the ones that Carl, I think it was his first or second one, and I remember Carl posting something on Facebook afterwards saying, I bet Richard Murray doesn't have to go back to work after. And Carl was like paving some slabs and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's like, for sure. Yeah.
Very true. Like it just shows the almost the camaraderie of like the age group stuff, but just what we do for our enjoyment in sport. And I think that's why it's very much led me onto in recent couple of years looking at what we can do as sports people, but also as people, just for the planet.
I mean, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on, but we'll come to that in a little bit. We've got up to you being into Australia. What was the next move then? What did you do after that?
So came back into the UK, and I kind of actually had cause I came back to stay with my long-term partner, and it was kind of just a couple of years just to sort myself out after Adelaide and Aviles, and just say, right, it's just get myself grounded from a work point of view. So my partner and I ended up moving up to Newcastle. So I had probably 2016, 2017 just quite quiet years, and then 2018 I decided to do just all of local events rather than travel anywhere, and ended up getting quite a nice haul of local medals and trophies. So I ended up, I think, winning about 5 events outright in the Northeast.
Well done.
And getting the overall senior series championships.
Excellent.
Which was just great fun, and I think definitely gave me a nice introduction to the Northeast area, and meeting a lot of people up here and speaking to a lot of people, Gary and from Coalfields, and who's done a number of events, and it's really nice just getting to know the local people. And I think haven't really done too much last year in 2019, just a couple of events, and I wanted to try and do rates, half Ironmans, and see how I could do again local half Ironmans.
Sure.
But, very difficult distance to get, really, those half irons, and the target was sort of under that 4 hours 30, and try and get it any faster if we can.
Yeah, there's sort of like a good base up there in the Northeast for triathlon and multisport in general.
Yeah, I'd definitely say, I mean, Stockton Duathlon, that was a really good partnership to see between the council and Try Hard events. It was quite a nice one that the council really supported that, to obviously have the closed roads.
Yeah.
And, it's I think quite again, from putting my healthcare head on, trying to get people active and with the go tries and the go duathlons.
Yeah.
Just to get people involved in sport. It's a really nice event to do.
Yeah.
And can actively get a lot of the community involved.
Yeah, I mean there was all types of people there, wasn't there? You know, from beginners just to runners to, you know, people doing team events who did bike and run, and it's really nice to see. And I think that overall that's the great thing about multisport, isn't it? That there's so much open to people that, you know, they can do whatever.
Yeah.
So that's exactly, really good. Yeah.
And then you've also got the Woodhorn Triathlon. That's been a qualifier for a couple of years now. And then there's a couple of the other nice ones up here. You've got the Castle and Derwent Tri.
Yeah.
That's at Derwent Water. It's a really nice one at the reservoir there. So it's a lovely couple of local triathlon. What else? You got the last couple of years they've had the Try on the Tyne. That was by what's his name? Steve Cramp. Cramp, yeah. Redgrave was
yeah. His daughter does duathlons.
Yeah. So they had the Try on the Tyne, and that looked really successful. And this year they were hoping to run a natural triathlon in the city centre as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's been cancelled.
Yeah.
So I think it's the Northeast is very, very highly competitive, and I think especially in the last couple of years, I've realised actually the time trialing scene is absolutely massive. I never realised those competitions between the Walker brothers and stuff, that you just read a little bit of the history into it, and going back into like even into the Boardman era of and like looking at O'Brien and everything, looking at particularly what Harry Walker's done and Gary in terms of pushing those like the aerodynamic bond. It's just amazing to see what has come out of up here, really.
Yeah, it's fantastic place. So, are you coached at the moment? Have you ever been coached, or how?
Yeah, I had a couple of coaches over the past. So I had Aaron Harris, who used to be on the British Triathlon talent squad when I raced a little bit with Jackpot Racing.
Okay.
The guys at Jackpot had put us in contact with like Tom Bishop and Aaron, just to say, would any of us hire up age groupers, like a bit more sort of coaching towards our sport, and Aaron and I joined up, and I think that's where some of the training regimes of 2018, where I got very much those consistency in training patterns, very much helped that season, and then more recently I've just been sort of having guidance and coaching from John Levick again,
right?
Really, because John's now sort of doing his coaching qualifications again.
Yeah.
So it's been nice just having a couple of little coaches here and there, and I'm always open to listening to what everybody has learned from, and I think that's one of the best things about age group, is you can listen to what other people who work full time, how they do things and how they fit things in.
Yeah.
And definitely, like, one of my big sort of inspirations is always thinking about like how some of the older guys get on with sport, work, but also like family life as well. I mean, I'm quite lucky. I just live with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Whereas some guys have got kids as well.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. How do they fit it all in?
I mean, I just
Yeah, but surprising, you know, when you want to do something, how you can find the time. And, you know, I just did the last podcast with a Canadian, and, you know, he was getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, doing his rides and his runs, and, you know, people do, and they fit it in, and because he was doing half Ironmans and Ironmans, so, you know, he needed to do that. He had children, so it's just what you want to do it. You want it badly enough, you'll sacrifice, won't you? So what's your favourite part of the whole process?
I'd definitely say the people and the connections that you've made, like throughout my life. It's just that friendship network, really.
Yeah.
You always go back and reminisce on your travels to events or accidents along the way, and just those funny things. I mean, after Adelaide, I was very lucky because I was just travelling around, but I don't know if you've ever met John or Ian Micklethwaite from Yorkshire. We ended up just renting a camper van from Adelaide, and we just did the south coast way from Adelaide to Melbourne, just as a sort of after championships, which was just great fun, and just those sort of little things that you do after. I mean, a lot of us tend to make like holidays of the event going abroad, and but like I say, that those friendships that you make along the way, it's great fun.
What resources and websites do you use? What have you come across that you found invaluable?
So I think just reading like your 220 magazine, that was always my first thing. I've still got some of the first magazines that I had. They always give out nice little plans as to how to structure your like winter training, and obviously a lot of things have gone online nowadays. So you've got your Zwift, which I've dipped my toe in and out of a little bit. Haven't done anything consistent on there. I tend to stick a bit old school and just do the hard sessions, just with my trainer, and just look at the actual numbers rather than following anybody else. I think I'd get roped into on Zwift, just racing all the time. So I do like the structure of just sticking to the sessions that I know. Sticking on some hard music and just sitting on the turbo doing that, really.
Yeah.
That's what I prefer.
Yeah.
Other things that I'm always a sucker for reading up on the latest stuff. So whenever new items come out on like Tri 24/7 or on like DC Rainmaker, I always just read up about there just before, like if I wanted to get anything. And likewise, like I said, just talking to other age group athletes and other guys, just saying what they use. It's always the best way is word of mouth. Experience.
Yeah, cool. So what's your favourite piece of kit?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Definitely say the bike is always the go-to one. I mean, I've got an absolutely lovely bike, Trek Speed Concept, but you still go to events and you look at, and you always get bike envy. And it's always the way, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I've got a lovely bike, and I always think that it's like, oh, I've got such a nice bike, but hell, that Specialized is good, or hell, that other one. It just looks. I think I'm always intrigued by different people's bikes and different people's setups, and like I said, from a physiology and physio point of view, I do like seeing what other people have for like the cockpit setups, seeing like the ergomantis setups, or just looking at those different variations that people sort of go with to find their aerodynamic abilities.
It's a complete science, isn't it? It's an art, I think, an art form to get
massively,
because everybody's different and all the bikes are different, and
that's what always intrigues me. And then I was at Outlaw this year, and you saw a couple of Ventons, and you're like, oh, or the Cervelo P5s, and you're just like, bloody hell. Like, they're just such intriguing bikes. And then, like I say, I always like a bit of history and seeing like the Lotus bikes or the old Zips, and you're just like, well, nothing's new here, really.
Not really. No, you think, don't you, that Cervelo that came out a few years back, you think, wow, that's sort of like alien bike, but actually. Go back in history, and they've been doing it for years and years and years. They just weren't legal, were they? Nothing seems to be new.
No.
So goals going forward. What are your short-term and your long-term goals?
So at the moment, I've still got that goal of looking to get under a 4:30 half Ironman time, really. Try and push it towards that 4 hours as much as possible. I definitely think I've got it possible in my legs. I mean, was it last year? I managed to get a 34:02 10K, and I was absolutely gutted that I was 2 seconds off breaking 34 minutes.
Isn't it always the way?
Say again.
Isn't it always the way? Yeah.
And I kind of felt last year that I had it in my legs to dip under the 34 minutes. So I'd definitely say in the short term, it's maintaining that speed that I have for the 10K and the 5K. And I think just seeing what's available, really. And I think, like I said in the email earlier, just keeping things as local as possible, looking at what I can do around here and around the UK, really.
Cool. Well, that's well, good luck with that. And now we can move on to your sustainability, because that's quite an interesting topic that I obviously follow you on Instagram and watch the pictures and the bikes and stuff that you're going around on. I like the look of the recent one that you put on over the weekend. That was it was almost, well, it reminded me of Holland for some reason. So if you want to explain a little bit about the sustainability and how you got involved in that would be great.
Yeah, I think since we moved up to Newcastle, my partner and I, we got an allotment, and we were just realising how much we were sort of using from the supermarkets and everything, and what we were getting on our day-to-day. And I mean, I get through, when I'm properly training, I get through a kilo of peanut butter a month.
Right.
And at that time, I was buying like the kilo Whole Earth and Hip and Nut like peanut butters, and they were always coming in plastic packaging. And I was just like, there's got to be like an alternative to this. So I stopped trying to like eat as much peanut butter and looking at other alternatives, and we grew a lot of like vegetables and fruits that year, and like we started making a lot of our own stuff. And we're like, what else can we do in our day-to-day life to look at like sustainability? So it was around that time that obviously those programs from like David Attenborough came out, and it was like, God, there's a lot of stuff going on at just what everybody is doing, and very much the believer that as the general population, we do unfortunately have a lot of power to say, well, why can't this change? I think more people that are aware and interested in looking at changing their habits from, like, for me now, like I found a company in Huddersfield that produced peanut butter by the kilo in a completely recyclable tin.
Right.
So now I still buy my kilo of peanut butter, but buy the tin, and I now know that that's recyclable. And just looking at what ways I can reduce my plastic. So I started off simply like with toothbrushes and toothpaste, and then again, a lot of cyclists and triathletes, we like to shave our legs and all the rest of it. And so some people, rather than buying the big razors all the time, I've gone for like your old safety razor that you can get, and just using those alternatives. And at the start of 2020, it kind of looked at like, what else can we do in triathlon from a sustainability point of view? And that's where I messaged Presca, and seeing the good work that they're doing from recycling plastic into triathlon kit and running kit. And it kind of stemmed from there, like, what sort of challenges can it do over this year? And I just typed it in on Google and came across, there's a sustainable triathlon down in Devon. I was like, bloody hell, that's a long way to go from Newcastle. Let's challenge myself as to what we can do to get there. And obviously, you could cycle it. It would take you a few days. And then I was like, what else could you do? You could look at car sharing, or like getting a bus. And I considered like, could I pick people up along the route who want to go down to the triathlon just to minimize some of the journey? And I remember I've attended a couple of British universities sport events, and I remember seeing like Oxford and Loughborough turn up to some of the events, and they came on with coaches, and then on the back they had this massive like haul of bikes, and I was like, that's not a bad idea. You can pick up people along the route, similar to when we like traveled to Calca, and the bus would come down the M1 and everybody would pick up on the bus, and then we'd all go over to Calca on the bus, which was great fun. But could those sorts of things come across and just do like to events in the UK? But then COVID kicked off, and so couldn't really look at car sharing. So I thought, what else could you do? Like, and so I ended up chatting to a couple of like community schemes up here and looking at the availability for car sharing, but also the electric fleet that this community car club have available. So rented one of those to go down, and I think that was probably the scariest moment from from getting there, using an electric vehicle and the charge points. So just looking at those alternatives that we can do for triathletes on traveling to and from places. And then again, I think there's a really nice network of runners starting to open up, like Rerun, that are appearing on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and they're looking at recycling and reusing as much of the kit as possible. And I know for a fact that a lot of triathletes go through a heck of a number of shoes, and I've been guilty of this as well, that once I start to run a pair of shoes in and toes start to come through, and then unfortunately if they're not suitable enough, then they go into the bin, or like if they're not suitable for the up and running charities to send them over to Africa, then they just end up in a lot of bins. I think there's going to be a massive shift. I mean, we've already heard of looking next year at this recycle thing. Vivo are another great brand that are looking at pushing those boundaries and offering those recycling, like they'll re-sole the shoe. And there's so much being done at the moment. And I think, as with sport all the time, from an injury prevention point of view within my profession, from physiotherapy, like we see all of the rehabilitation that goes on. Sport has been at the forefront of like the injury and rehab point of view. But I think sport is going to be at the forefront of change from a sustainability point of view. And I saw earlier in the year that Alistair and Johnny had signed a thing to the government to say, like, we need to look at pursuing this a bit more. But I mean, personally, I want to see like British Triathlon and the elite sports personnel pushing, as well as ourselves as age group athletes, pushing our governing bodies and other people to say, we need to look at how we change our sport. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to participate at our sport any longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a big thing, and I think the evolution of e-races might be a new thing as well. That's going to be really interesting, like setting up local triathlons to do in your local gyms. That could be a really good thing after COVID. But we're all going to have to start putting our heads together and think, how can we make these changes? Because unfortunately, the lifestyles that we all have as age group athletes might not be long continued. We'll have to look at, I think, going back to when I started in Holmfirth, those lovely moments that I had with the community there. I think it's going to, if we go back to a nice community base and look at like borrowing equipment, so looking at borrowing time trial bikes, look at chopping and changing equipment here and there, just to give everybody that opportunity to sport. I think it's something that we're going to need to look at, changing those mindsets to be able to allow sport to flourish for the likes of the juniors that are coming up, because the world's going to change. Yeah.
And I think we've already seen that with COVID this year, haven't we? How much you were talking there about sort of virtual. I mean, I know I've taken part in several virtual races this year, and it's a bit weird. But they've been good fun, because there's still a community there, you know. So it's there's a guy that I interviewed, Nick Price. I met in Soria in 2017. He was on episode 2, and he started up a virtual duathlon every weekend, and he's on Facebook, and you know, he's got 300 or 400, well, maybe 500-600 followers now, and people are taking part every weekend, because it's, you know, not just a one-off. It's free, and you've got some accountability there, and it's, you know, so it is. I think if COVID's give us anything, it's give us that. So tie that with the sustainability, and yeah, you're right, you might be onto something. Good. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it, Craig. Thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you. Amazing. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Well done.
Thanks, Craig. Cheers. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Wow, so much to think about there. Massive thanks for Craig for educating me in the ways and possibilities of being more sustainable in both living and training. It's definitely given me food for thought about the way we live and the things we buy, to do the things that we enjoy. So thank you, Craig. Well, that's it for 2020. I've got to say, like most of you guys, I'll be glad to see the back of it. But I would just like to say a big thank you to all the age groupers who've been on the podcast since we started it, and couldn't be done without you guys sharing your stories. So massive thank you. And a big thanks to all you guys out there who have been listening over the last 18 episodes and supporting the podcast. I hope you're getting something out of it and enjoying listening as much as I'm enjoying doing it. I've met some great people that I probably wouldn't have otherwise in our multi-sport community, and I hope you all have a great Christmas and a happy new year, and we can get back to living life in 2021. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on the social media, Instagram, amp_1967, Facebook, amp_GB, Twitter, amp1967, and on our YouTube channel at amp. Please rate and review and subscribe to our channel. This helps us to reach more of our community. That just leaves me to say a big thank you once again. And remember, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.